Answer continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios.
If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Thomas Sowell interview by Peter Robinson from a couple months back on the occasion of his latest book, Thomas Sowell's. Asked essentially Peter Robinson asked if the identitarian left got everything they wanted, what would be happening in America right now? And Thomas Sowell said simply, we'd be killing each other. Yep. Certainly looks like Thomas Sowell was over the target, as he normally is, with just some of the manifestations of people, boy, if they weren't restrained at least a little bit by law enforcement, what they would be doing on college campuses and in urban centers. Now add in the possibility of a real economic downturn. The sugar high that we've been on thanks to a decade of quantitative easing, which is just loose monetary policy, which is just printing money, and combined with the massive print and spend that occurred during COVID. Well, there's some people suggesting that a significant downturn and market correction are not that far in the offing, as we're in a stagflationary environment. So you already have 3/4 of Americans basically saying things are not going well for me economically because my wages aren't keeping up with price increases, and now take a real hit to principle and go up the economic food chain a little bit too with that hit. There's some people that are worried, and even shocks to the system because of the monomaniacal focus on getting Trump and imprisoning him at all costs. Kevin Hassett, who was an econ advisor to Trump, he's a fund manager now, he had this to say about the circus in Manhattan and its potential economic impact, depending on what Judge Merchant wants to do, on with Maria Bartiromo yesterday.
But the big risk, the outlook for me is something I've never seen before. That I really think if you look at the case in New York, that the judge is being so, undemocratic, unconstitutional in his rulings against President Trump. It really looks like there's a conspiracy to put him in jail, to put him behind bars. And if President Trump is in chains going to Rikers Island, then, would you want to buy a U.S. Treasury the next day? The thing that I'm really worried about short-term risks for the economy is that the Democrats are serious in this lawfare, and if they actually succeed, then imagine it's like we become a banana republic the moment they take them to Rikers, and I just can't imagine what happens to Treasury markets that day.
Wow. So you think if that actually materializes, markets will take note?
Markets will take note, and it'll be one of the bigger market effects that we've ever seen.
We are on the razor's edge. That's what VDH is saying. Victor Davis Hanson, longtime classicist, California State University, Fresno, senior fellow at the Hoover Institution. He's got a new book that is out. Pick it up, of course. Pick up everything VDH has written. The End of Everything, How Wars Descend into Annihilation. The End of Everything is VDH's new book. VDH, thanks so much for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
What do you think about what Kevin Hassett had to say? And I not even just on the narrow issue of Trump being imprisoned on some contempt charge by the judge in that Manhattan case, but in the context of everything that's going on around us.
Well, I know Kevin well. He's a colleague of mine at the Hoover Institution. He doesn't make wild accusations. I think he's just formulating what all of us had already concluded, that the more this lawfare goes on, and I call it lawfare because these crimes have never been articulated or even charged against anybody else. They're all unique in their own way, and the longer it goes on, the longer people, both our enemies who say, the Chinese and the Russians say, well, they're just like us, and more our allies get worried that we're tearing ourselves apart. And in terms of the economic realm, I think what he's saying is if the economy was booming, as Biden says, it wouldn't matter as much. They would just write it off. But politics, but we're borrowing $1 trillion every 100 days. and the Build Back Better and the Inflation Reduction Acts were the biggest inflationary government boondoggles in history. So I think what Kevin's saying is that at this critical juncture, we need to be very sober and judicious in what's happening. We're turning into a third world Latin American dictatorship type of law, jurisprudence, and we don't have any margin of error. And I think he's right about that.
We talked to former Indiana Governor Mitch Daniels a little bit earlier in the show. We're talking about the campus chaos and vileness that's occurring on college campuses and in the streets, spilling over. Of course, we're all in one big college campus now. But a point he made, trying to look at the glass as half full, is don't forget about the dogs that don't bark. Don't forget about all the people on the college campus that are going about their business, that are serious students. Don't forget about the people that are being productive in the larger economy and so on and so forth. So how do you net that out when you consider that, of course, the people that make spectacles of themselves are going to get disproportionate attention, but it's not necessarily representative, and it's sort of a 2024 version of the silent majority. Is that going to be enough to stave off some of this banana republicanism you're speaking of?
I hope so, but the problem in particular on these campuses are that the administrations and the faculty and the minority, and the clear minority of students, are in control of the apparatus, and they can cancel the graduation. They give 80% of all grades A's at Yale. They are in tune with blue state mayors and governors, because these are all in mostly blue states, these troublesome campuses. It's kind of analogous to the larger picture that all of Biden's issues on the border, the economy, foreign policy, crime, they don't even poll 40%. But he's running neck and neck, supposedly, because this small minority controls the media, the foundations, K through 12, academia, many of the corporate boardrooms, entertainment, popular culture. So when you look back in history and you say, well, how in the world did the Bolsheviks ever take control? Nobody wanted them. The Mensheviks were much more popular. Or how come there was a reign of terror in 1793 that the Jacobins were a bunch of crazy, wealthy, spoiled brats that started guillotining people? Or how did the National Socialists take control?
Did we lose VDH?
They only won 33. Yeah, they only won 33% of the vote.
Oh, VDH, we lost you there for a second when you cut out when you were talking about the spoiled brats of the
what I was just saying is that in history, these spoiled brats, they don't have a majority, is what I'm saying. And yet they exercise power, whether it's the Bolsheviks in Russia, where they were a minority, or the Jacobins during the French Revolution, or the National Socialists that had a minority of the vote in 1933. So they control the universities. They control the faculty, they control administration, they control the blue state mayors and governors, and they have the ability to cancel graduation for everybody. Or they result in 80% of the people getting A's at Yale. So I'm happy that none of the issues that Biden is promoting on the border crime, as I said, deterrence, have majority support, but he's still in power, and he's pretty close in the polls, because when you control the media and the entertainment and the popular culture, you have power that's not commensurate with your small percentage of popular support. And that's what I think the Republicans and concurrents have neglected. They have neglected the universities. They've neglected the power of the media. They've neglected the foundations. And I think they've sort of retreated into, I can't deal with these crazy people. I'm going to go to Tennessee, or I'm not going to watch the Oscars anymore, or I'm not going to send my kid to Stanford. But they need to get re-energized and say, you know what? These are not their institutions. These are our institutions. And we're not just going to give them up to these people in the 21st century. These institutions, the Rockefeller Foundation, was not intended to be as it is, and the Constitution didn't allow to get rid of the Electoral College, say, from this national voting compact they're trying to push. So I think everybody's got to get engaged, because yes, they're a minority, and most students are wonderful students, speaking of someone who's on the Stanford campus, but I watch the people who are the radicals and the Middle Eastern students, and I know the faculty and I know the administration, and they have the ability to, I guess the word is, wreck it for the majority, and they will if they're allowed to do that. And so far, I mean, if you look at Rutgers and Brown and Northwestern just recently, they negotiated. I mean, they gave these radical, violent protesters everything they wanted. They said there'll be Palestinian fellowships from Gaza. We'll have more Middle Eastern professors. We will use the word genocide and colonial and settler in our official communiques. So I guess what I'm saying is that absolutely right that the majority of students are wonderful, just like the majority of Americans. But we're dealing with something that we've never really dealt with in years. This isn't the Democratic Party. It's something different. It's a revolutionary, progressive, strident, intolerant, and they're willing to do any means necessary, whether it's lawfare or storm Hamilton Hall at Columbia or do anything. And they don't have popular support. So if just one college president said, you know what, if you break the rules, you're going to be suspended. If you're here on a student visa and you're suspended, you're going to go back to the Middle East. That would stop it.
Your book, The End of Everything, your new book, How Wars Descend into Annihilation, it provides some historical examples, as you're wont to do, of where war broke out and the on one side wasn't just defeated, they were annihilated, they were made extinct. And so, I mean, and I know there's a lot of parallels, and you've made some of them that are popular among conservatives, like to the French Revolution. But the historical examples that are cited in your book, are there parallels, maybe not perfect, but some parallels in terms of where we're at and what we should try to avoid doing?
Yeah, I think there are. It's very rare. Most wars, as you know, end in surrender. Even in World War II, we didn't annihilate the Japanese and Germans. We recalibrated or rebooted them. But every once in a while it happens, and I picked, ancient Thebes, Carthage, Constantinople, and the Aztec city of Tenochtitlan to show that sometimes it does happen, and is there a pattern? And there is a pattern. And there's other examples I alluded to as well, where these majestic civilizations feel that they're running on fumes and they don't reinvest in themselves, so they're financially strapped, or their militaries are weakened, or and they look at their walls and they say nobody has ever breached the walls of Constantinople or Carthage. We're indomitable, and they underestimate their enemies. They have no idea who Scipio or Alexander the Great is. So when I look at the present time, and in the epilogue, I look at, Iran threatening Israel, Ukraine being threatened with nuclear weapons. The Erdogan said he had a solution for the Armenians that his grandfathers used. He said he would send missiles into Athens if he had to. We all discount that, just as these ancient examples. People said it can't happen here. Nobody would ever destroy the ancient city of Thebes, Oedipus, Antigone. Nobody would do that. So when I look at America, I think, well, we're spending all of this money. We're short 45,000 recruits that we've alienated, mostly white males from the working class who die at twice their demographics in Afghanistan and Iraq. We have this lawfare going on. Crime is out of control, and yet we withdraw in humiliation from Afghanistan. We can't deter the Houthis or Hamas or Hezbollah or Iran. And yet there's a sense of denial. We're the United States. This is what Biden always says. We're the United States. We got the best economy in the world. We're the strongest nation. But it's sort of that decline is sort of like that famous line that everybody's quoting in Hemingway's Sun Also Rises. Bankruptcy comes gradually, then suddenly. Mm-hmm. So if you look at what's going on, if you and I had this conversation 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, when I said to you, Biden is going to destroy the border and 10 million illegal aliens are going to come in and they're going to demand free housing and free shelter and food, or they're going to demonstrate. And we're going to have a resurgence of anti-Semitism that no one has seen in the West since the Nazis. You would have thought I was crazy. I would have thought I was crazy. Yet that's normal now. And so that's what happens with these societies. Very dangerous development started to happen in Carthage, naivete, and they just said they won't do this, they can't do this. You don't believe the Romans would ever level it. Constantinople, people on the wall said the Western Roman from Rome will come and help us. The Sultan doesn't really want to destroy us. People said Alexander's, he was tutored by Aristotle. he would never destroy a language, a civilization, a city. And it happens. And so I'm just thinking that what prevents it from happening in our time and space is a strong United States. We make sure that the Houthis can't destroy the Red Sea commerce. We destroy the Eastern. We ensure that nobody interferes in the Eastern Mediterranean, the Straits of Hormuz, or the Black Sea, and all of those. Just to take that example, including the South China Sea, no one controls those situations now except illiberal regimes that will, say you can't use the Red Sea, you can't use the South China Sea, you can't use the Black Sea, you can't use the Straits of Hormuz unless we let you. And that's pretty much what's happening. And so it's very insidious is what I'm trying to say, and denial and naivete and reliance on past and lost splendor, all of those symptoms, and then a complete underestimation of enemies. And I don't think we take seriously the Chinese at all. I don't think we understand what their agenda is, what their students are doing here, what their trade is intended for, what fentanyl going to Mexico is, what the idea behind that is from China. So there are similarities.
He is Victor Davis Hanson of the Hoover Institution. His new book, The End of Everything, How Wars Descend into Annihilation. Pick it up now. Victor Davis Hanson, thank you as always. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
The more you listen, the more you'll know. This is Chicago's Morning Answer. Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Gold rose significantly in the past 5 presidential election years. This election year, gold is up 15%. Don't believe paid celebrity hype on buying gold. Call America's gold expert, Dr. Mike Fulgens at Universal Coin and Bullion for my free award-winning gold guide. I've advised attorneys general on consumer protection. Don't overpay, as I won't add ridiculous markups. Call Dr. Fulgens. Dial pound 250 on your mobile phone and say Gold Expert. That's pound 250 and say Gold Expert.
Have you or anyone you know ever lived